Ning described the fruit that he ate and made Clara think hard for a bit. I'm not sure, she said. I've never heard of such a fruit in my life. She gave it some more thought, but she truly couldn't think of any fruit that matched the description Ning said. I tried searching for that fruit in the city too, and I couldn't find it. It must have been a very rare plant, seeing as how it was on top of the turtle that roamed the ocean, he said. I'm actually surprised you saw a turtle at all. Most divine beasts are known to be very, very strong and hard to find. Just being around them can kill you because of how strong they are, Clara said. Oh, then I must be lucky to not have died, Ning said. Clara nodded. Suddenly, she created 3 shadow daggers in her hand that she threw at Ning. Ning wasn't focused at all, so when that attack was launched, he barely had any time to dodge it. The 3 daggers flew at him in a horizontal line, and Ning managed to dodge 2 of them. But he got hit with the third one that was in the direction of where he had jumped. He fell to the grassy ground with a thud and a sharp pain in his stomach. He quickly got back up and checked his body, but there was nothing. The daggers had disappeared and all that remained was a dull pain where it had hit him. What the hell was that? He shouted back at Clara, who was walking towards him. Nothing, she said. Just testing your reflexes. They aren't bad, but they could definitely use some work. I will send someone to train you in swords. You said you were strong with a sword, didn't you? It's time to test it. Sigh, sure, Ning said and sat back on the ground. Clara turned around and left. He walked into the house, and as soon as she did, she spoke to the person that was waiting for her. Send someone strong to test his sword skill and report to me on how strong he is. As you say, boss, the man said. Also, Clara added. Keep an eye out for what he does. He knows who I am, so he might try to give that information to the other gangs. If you find anything suspicious, report it to me immediately. If it is serious, however, you are authorized to kill him. Yes, boss. Ning was oblivious to the conversation and simply waited around for someone to come to test him at sword fight. Clara arrived in the room where Kepler was staying. It seemed he had used as much essence from the crystal as he could and had left the rest to be tested. Is the test complete? She asked. No, we only just started, he said. It should take some time. Clara nodded. Where's Carlos? She asked. He went to get me some herbs, Kepler said. Boss, are you sure we can trust him? He warned us and was suspicious of you when I didn't speak back then. I don't think he has any bad intentions at all. We can be careful just in case, but I believe the right thing to do is to believe him and work under the assumption that many of our members have given me up. What do we do? Kepler asked. I'm sure there are many that are trying to give you up in exchange for money or even less. We'll have to figure out who's with us and who's not, Clara said. We will have to use me as bait to smoke them out. Kepler nodded. I'll work on it as soon as we're done with the crystal, he said. You should leave the city for now, boss. Go to Lambot City and stay hidden for a bit. HMPH. I don't have to hide from some little essence manifestation realm flies. The most I'll have to worry about is them being too loud, Clara said with clear disgust in her voice. That might be true for you, boss, but it's not the same for us. Your presence killed Yana today, and even I nearly died. Please hide for a while so we can get this over with, Kepler said. Clara frowned for a bit as she remembered the old woman from the tavern that had died because the bosses came looking for her. Tisk. She didn't have a way around what he had said. Fine, I'll leave the day after tomorrow once I get those crystals. Kepler nodded. The two of them stayed and talked for a while when they heard a knock on the door. Clara nodded and Kepler spoke. Who's there? He asked. It's me, Band, the man spoke. Come in, Kepler said, and the man named Band quickly walked in. There you are, boss. I was looking for you, the man said with a worried look on his face. Clara was surprised to see the man so flustered. What's up? She asked. It was you who asked me to test the young man in the backyard, right? He asked. Oh, you were the one that tested him? Clara asked. How's he? Is his sword skill any good? The man gave an awkward smile toward the boss. Good. He couldn't help but nervously laugh when he heard that. If he was just good, then I won't even dare call myself mediocre. Clara's eyes narrowed. So, he's quite good? She asked. I have no doubt that he's the best I've seen in a very long time, boss, the man said. He doesn't seem to have that much essence, but his skills definitely make up for it with his sword. Clara's eyes went wide in surprise. Are you saying that he's one of the best swordsmen you've seen, ever? She asked. Not one of, boss, the man said. He is the best. Clara couldn't believe it at all. Was he really that good? If he was as good as they said, then she must definitely do whatever she could to keep the youth in the gang. Ning went from room to room looking for Carlos, but couldn't find him at all. He ended up knocking on the room Kepler was in, who called him inside. Oh, hey. I didn't realize you were here as well, Ning said when he saw Clara on the couch. What are you guys doing? Waiting for our people to be done with testing the crystal. What about you? Clara asked. I'm looking for Carlos. Have you seen him? Ning asked. He's out on a small errand, Kepler replied. Do you know when he will be back? Ning asked. It should be an hour or two, Clara asked. Why? Damn, Ning spoke softly as he thought to himself. Clara seemed a little annoyed that he wasn't answering her question. Why? She asked again, but louder. Huh? Oh, he still hasn't paid me for today, that's why, Ning said. He was supposed to give me 50 earth coins, but things got hectic and I ended up being unpaid. Clara couldn't help but sigh when she heard that. Why do you need the money? I'll pay you instead with whatever it is that you want, she said. Let's see, Ning thought. I need money for 3 things. First for food, secondly to make a sheath for my sword, and finally to buy a decent technique so I can improve my essence rank. Just eat what's in the kitchen for now, Clara said. I'll send someone with you to get your sheath made. As for an absorption technique, I will find one for you by evening. Don't worry about it. I see, thanks boss, Ning said. I'm going to the kitchen. Have the person who's taking me out meet me there. Ning left the room, leaving the two by themselves again. Do you trust him? Kepler asked. Of course not, Clara said. Someone happens to lose their memories just as they happen to meet Carlos in a bar to get brought over by him here on a happenstance. That's too many coincidences happening that I don't like. Then why not just get rid of him? Kepler asked. Because there's a chance it's all true, she said. If it is, I don't want to lose someone with so much talent and potential simply because I was a little paranoid. I see, Kepler said as he stood up. I'll find someone to go with him. Clara nodded. Ning found some bread to eat in the kitchen. While he didn't necessarily need to eat for sustenance thanks to the fruit he had drank this morning, he still found the empty stomach annoying. So, all he did was fill up his stomach with bread and water. By the time he was done, someone came to the kitchen looking for him. You're the new kid that Brother Kepler wants me to help? A blue-haired woman asked him. Ning quickly downed the rest of the food and stood up as he wiped his face. Yes, it's me, he said as he put his hands forward in greeting. The woman stepped back in disgust. Ning looked at his hand and took it back while smiling awkwardly. Sorry, he said. He quickly washed his hands and came back around. Hi, I'm Ning, he introduced himself to her. You can call me Sophie, the blue-haired woman said. Come on, we don't have much time. Ning nodded and walked along with the girl as they left the building. Sophie looked at the sword in Ning's hand and gestured at it. That's the sword that needs a sheath? She asked. Yes, Ning said. You got the money right, because I don't have any. We won't be needing any money, Sophie said. Ning wondered what she meant for a moment, but realized that it must have something to do with the gang. There were probably smithies that were under the gang. He looked at the girl and saw 2 daggers by her left hip, and a long sword on her right. She was most likely a strong fighter in the gang. Ning ignored his thoughts for the time being and looked around the city, enjoying the views. He looked left and right, looking at anything and everything that was in the city. He saw the various shops, streets, houses, and even people. He saw essence being used to creating stuff that was all over the place, from lamps to signposts. After walking for about 10 minutes, they reached a smithy with quite a few people in it. Sophie took Ning and went deep inside until she found someone. Little Sophie, how can I help you today? A man walked away from the sword he was working on and looked at Sophie. He needs a sheath for his sword, Sophie said as she pointed at Ning. Ning pulled the sword out of the belt on his hip and held it flat in 2 hands to show it to the man. This sword is incredibly sharp, so it needs a non-tight fitting sheath, he said. Very sharp? How sharp? The man asked. I tested it before, and it can cut metal like paper, Ning said. Whoa. That's certainly sharp. Mind if I test it first? The man asked. Sure. Go ahead, Ning said. The man brought back a small piece of metal and laid it on top of two larger pieces of metal. Can you try and cut this in two? He asked. Yes, Ning said and placed the sword on top of the metal. Then, he simply pushed through softly, and the sword passed through. Wait, you didn't even swing it, the man said. Yeah, and it's still enough, Ning said. You can see why I'm looking for a sheath now, can't you? Yes, the man said. Let me get some measurements for now. Give me the sword. Ning shook his head. You can't pick up the sword. You'll have to measure it like this. The man nodded and brought out a measuring tape. All right, hold still, the man said as he measured everything. You can leave now. I will have to think of how to make a sheath good enough to handle such a sharp sword. Come back tomorrow. Ning walked back with Sophie, taking in the setting sun to the west. That was the direction he had come from, according to the map. He wondered how far west he must have been for no boats to even bother going there. How did you meet boss? Sophie asked out of nowhere. I came with Carlos too. Well, I escorted Carlos basically, Ning said. He wasn't sure how much of the information on Crystal was free for him to give to random people in the gang. You escorted Carlos? Sophie looked at him weirdly. Aren't you weaker than him? In essence, Ning said. I did hear your fighting capabilities were quite good, the blue-haired girl said. I wonder if you were as good as Band. Ning gave a curious look. Wasn't that the guy the first beat in swordsmanship today? He thought. He decided to not answer Sophie at all. They finally returned back to the house. Find me tomorrow around noon. We will go together to get your sword sheet, she said. Thank you, Sophie, Ning said with a gentle smile. I'm just doing what I was told to, the girl said and simply walked away. Ning was about to go his own way too when someone told him that Kepler was looking for him. He went to the room where Kepler was and found him alone. The boss is not with you this time around? I assumed she would be with you, he said. He can't be with us at all times, Kepler said before giving Ning a glare. Yes, he. Ning said before quickly nodding. He was supposed to hide the boss's gender too. After all, that was the most important piece of secret that was keeping the boss an enigma. Everyone expected the boss of the Paradise Hunters to be a battle-hardened middle-aged man. No one would expect a young girl like Clara to be the boss. Young, I wonder if she is young, Ning thought. Since a person goes through the physical improvement realm very early on, their body's rate of aging is slowed down by a lot. While he wasn't aware of just how much it slowed down, he was absolutely sure that the girl he had met was not in her 20s. He wouldn't be surprised if she was somehow in her 80s. Here, Kepler said as he handed Ning something. Ning curiously grabbed the object and found out it was a book. What's this? He asked as he looked at the cover with no name. An absorption technique. You wanted one, right? He said. Oh, yeah, Ning said excitedly. Thanks. Don't be too excited, Kepler said. It's a bad book. It's a, what? Ning looked back at the man. Kepler nodded. You should meet with the boss tomorrow and ask her to change the book for you. I have no idea why she would ever give you a book like this, unless. Can you tell me why this book is bad? Ning asked as he flipped through the pages. How much do you know about absorption techniques? Kepler asked. I would love it if you act like this is the first time I've heard of it, Ning said. Kepler nodded. As you may know, you cannot go through your various essence ranks without first absorbing essence, he said. There are various ways to absorb the essence, but the most practical way is to use a technique. Using a technique, you can absorb all the essence around you without having to look for it specifically. However, for the first 3 ranks, namely the physical improvement realm, the 5-sense improvement realm, and the essence sense realm, you cannot just absorb whatever essence you want. It always has to be pure essence. Oh, Ning exclaimed in surprise. Don't people absorb whatever essence they can find? I thought that was what I heard. They do, but those essences simply turn into pure essence, Kepler said. What about the elemental attribute of the essence? Ning asked. Does it have no impact on absorption at all? In some ways. After a while of absorbing the same essence over and over, your body gets used to it and is better capable of turning it into pure essence, Kepler mentioned. Not only that, it also becomes capable of holding the impure essence. While it doesn't help you improve ranks, it helps at just being able to quickly gather essence. Its real effect comes at the essence manifestation realm, where your body changes so that it is capable of improving through impure essence. Although that is too far for you right now to talk about, Kepler said. Ning nodded as he heard and cocked his head a little. So, why is this book bad? He asked. Most techniques improve your essence rank while you absorb the essence, Kepler said. That one, however, only does it when your core is entirely filled with pure essence. That is to say, without spending hours at a time collecting the pure essence, you can't even advance. Ning thought for a bit and asked, so, if I were in a place full of water essence, with that technique, I would first have to collect the water essence, turn that into what little pure essence it can become, and then do it over and over until there is nothing but pure essence in my core. Only then can I absorb more essence and start improving my essence realm? Kepler nodded. That's exactly it, he said. That is bad on paper, Ning said. But there must be something good about it, or the boss would never give it to me, right? I'm not sure, Kepler said. This is a technique that has publicly existed for hundreds of years, and yet I'm not aware of anyone who has been able to make good use of it due to its strict requirement. Does it have a name? Ning asked. It does, Kepler replied. It's called the twin moon breathing technique. Ning took the book and left the room. He went to a different room that was assigned to him and Carlos. Since Carlos wasn't around, the room was entirely his for the time being. He closed the door and sat on his bed as he let the dimming sunlight fall onto the pages of his book as he started reading it. The manual wasn't very long, barely 30 pages. The texts were even quite large too, so the overall time to read it all wouldn't take longer than half an hour. As he read, he realized something that was more depressing about the manual that Kepler hadn't mentioned to him at all. This technique can only be used at nighttime. What the hell? Ning thought with an annoyed look on his face. Damn it, I should have known based on the name. The sun set not long afterward, and while moonlight shined through the windows quite brightly, Ning still had to pull out a lantern from its cabinets on the side. He just didn't have as good a vision yet to use moonlight to read a book. While only half an hour read, Ning still in a body where he didn't have an eidetic memory, so he had to read the book multiple times, learning the small details that he missed on his reads, so he could perfect the breathing technique entirely before actually starting it. It took him late into the evening to be fully sure that he had learned it all. Once done, he closed his eyes and understood exactly what sort of breathing he had to do and what sort of movement his essence had to make for his core to collect it. Seems easy enough, he thought and began. Little by little, his breathing became irregular with no rhyme or rhythm to them. However, after breathing for a while longer, it fell into a peculiar pattern that no normal human being could do unconsciously. As he did, he felt the coolness of the essences around him slowly gather on his body. He felt a layer build around him as they gathered, but somehow only some of that got into his body. Ning didn't think much of it as that was exactly how the book had said it would be. The book had things that Kepler didn't explain to him. Most importantly, it had another major flaw that had to do with it being usable at night. That was the fact that the technique could mostly only absorb moonlight essence, discarding everything else. Because of how little moonlight essence was on a daily basis, that was another layer of difficulty in using this technique. Ning continued collecting the essence, hoping something good would happen eventually. Clara slumped on a couch after returning from somewhere. The results came back, Kepler reported. 82%. 82. Clara raised an eyebrow. Not bad. It's better than expected, Kepler said. Carlos and the rest should be bringing more tomorrow. Will you be leaving after you get them? Yeah, I will need to head towards the capital, Clara said. Kepler said nothing about it. Oh right, why did you give the new guy the trash technique? He asked. We could have just let him find something on his own if you don't trust him. I don't trust him, Clara said. That doesn't mean I don't want his trust. If there is a chance he's genuine, I'm willing to take it. Then why the technique? Kepler asked. Because it's the best for him, Clara said. Best. Kepler gave a weird look. How is the twin moon breathing technique best for anyone? It's the best for people who already have an incredibly pure core, Clara said, since they can directly start absorbing the essence without having to go through the gathering process. Kepler gave a weird look. That still doesn't make it better than other techniques thought, he said. The pure core only levels the playing field at best. No, the pure core gives you momentum that other techniques won't, Clara said. After all, since your body absorbs pure essence to improve, this technique allows for all of it to be absorbed at once if one so desires. Kepler said nothing. Also, the technique is exclusive to gathering moonlight essence, Clara explained. That is the closest you will ever get to having a pure essence in any other form after all. If the conditions are right, you can use that technique to blast through your essence ranks faster than anyone else out there. Ning felt a tempest of energy flow away from the core of his body as it was vehemently absorbed by his body. The moonlight essence entered his body too, but the input was nearly nowhere close to being what the output was. His body drained the pure essence in his core like nothing else. Ning started to panic a little that he would soon run out of pure essence and then this speed would slow down to a crawl. I need pure essence, he thought. He knew exactly where to get it. A fruit flew out of his storage as the sword to his side moved at once, creating a small hole in the fruit. Ning paused his breathing technique momentarily to drown himself in the juices of the fruit. After he was done, he began the technique once again. The moonlight essence fell on his skin again, slowly being absorbed away. However, what surprised Ning was the amount of essence his body was collecting from his stomach. The pure energy in his stomach was being driven toward his core so fast that Ning couldn't help but wonder if he was doing something wrong. He could feel his body improving at an incredible rate, becoming even stronger than it already was. Then, at some point, he felt something happen to it. Suddenly, the layer of essence on his body felt thicker. The temperature in the room fluctuated even more. His heartbeat grew louder, and the lingering sweetness from the fruit in his mouth grew more intense. He slowly opened his eyes and the night now seemed brighter than the day before. I've done it, Ning thought with an elated smile on his face. I've reached the 5-sense improvement realm. Ning woke up early in the morning and still found the improvement in his senses surprising. He could now feel the faintest difference in every single one of his senses. The sense also didn't overwhelm him at all. Sounds didn't get too loud, lights didn't get too bright. Or maybe they did. But his body also improved to accommodate the changes, which were why he was having such an easy time sensing everything. He snapped his finger in front of him. Not only could he hear the crisp snapping, but he could also hear the slight scratching sound before and after the snap. He could feel the coarseness of his skin as they rubbed against each other and could feel the heat created by the friction of his skin. Thank God I can ignore it, Ning thought. It would have been annoying if this was all I could feel and think about. His stomach growled and he realized that he was hungry. I haven't felt hunger in a while now, he thought. Is it because I used up everything last night while collecting essence? He left the room afterward to get refreshed and have some breakfast. He had a little more than just bread and water this time around, adding some eggs into the mix as well. Once done, he went out to exercise a little. The backyard was full of people already training, so he just had to find a small place for himself to train as well. He started off with some exercises and found out that his body felt surprisingly light. Did my body get stronger again? He wondered. There was definitely a difference, but Ning had a hard time judging if his body had gotten better or if his senses were playing a trick on him. He looked toward the black crystal to the side and decided to test. However, before he could go there, he heard the faintest breathing from behind him and turned around. A man was about to speak up to grab his attention, but his turning around made the man pause in his words. Hi, Ning said with a cheerful smile. How's it going? Good, the man said. You the new guy? I joined yesterday. Yes, Ning said. Can I help you? For a newcomer to directly be invited to a place like this, you must not be someone random. What's your secret? The man asked. Nothing really, Ning said. I joined through a recommendation. No wonder you did it wrong. You didn't think about greeting your seniors? The man asked. As a newcomer, you should work to impress your seniors. How about taking everyone here out to lunch? Ning looked at the man and smiled. I would love to, but I have no money at all. If you can lend me some, I will definitely treat you all to lunch, he said. The man frowned a little. You don't have any money? How could that possibly be true? He asked. I mean, I have some, but it's nearly not enough to take you all out on lunch, Ning said. Maybe some other day then. If you're not going to treat us to a lunch, then at least entertain us with a fight, the man said. I haven't had a good fight in a while and I'm already feeling rusty. How about that? I would love to, Ning said. But are you all right fighting with a newcomer? I'm fine with that, the man said and turned around. Everyone, please make some room. This newcomer has decided to fight with me, so be ready to be entertained. Oi Frank. Why do you always go after a newcomer? One person asked. Is beating newbies that fun? What do you mean fun? I'm simply trying to show them the difference in our capabilities so that they show us some respect, Frank said. He went over to a pile of weapons and dug through it to bring out a sword. What's your preferred weapon? The man asked. Something long with a weight to it, Ning said. Maybe a staff, preferably a spear. The man paused and looked at Ning. Are you sure? He asked with narrowed eyes. Of course, Ning said. Why would I not be? You aren't choosing a random weapon to act like you weren't fighting to your fullest potential when you lose against me, are you? The man asked. That's exactly what I'm doing, Brother Frank, Ning said. How did you find out? Tisk, tisk, tisk. The man clicked his tongue and brought out another sword. You don't get to hold back, not against me. Ning grabbed the sword and nodded. Very well, he said as he weighed the wooden sword in his hand. So light. Come, attack me whenever you are ready, the man said as he stood with a sword as well. Here I go then, Ning said and moved forward. The man sneered after seeing Ning's slow dash that came his way. He could tell that Ning wasn't very strong, so he swung his own sword to attack Ning. However, at the last moment, Ning's speed suddenly changed and so did the direction of his attack. The attack landed on right next to where the man was holding the sword and was forced to let go in fear of hurting his hand. The sword dropped to the ground and Ning stepped back. Would you like to continue? He asked. You bastard? You made it look like you're bad with a sword, he said. I am bad with a sword, Ning said. But that's still miles better than any other person. So, another round? Frank picked the sword up and shouted as he swung again. Ning saw the sword drop and simply moved his own sword, which sent the incoming sword in a slightly different direction, completely missing the target. At the same time, Ning stabbed the wooden sword into the man's stomach lightly, but still strong enough to hurt. The man fell back in pain and cried. Come on, senior, Ning taunted him. I'm still waiting to see the difference between our capabilities. I hear you humiliated Frank this morning. Clara spoke through a silhouette in the voice of a man that Ning knew to be her own, but simply distorted. The silhouette looked like a man, so Sophie, the blue-haired girl that was with him, was under the illusion that the boss was a man. He was the one that came after me first, Ning said without any hesitation. Sophie looked at him weirdly, clearly unable to process how he could have possibly beat Frank at all. Clara remained quiet for a while. Did you grow stronger? She asked. I think so, Ning said. Due to Frank calling me to a duel, I couldn't really test myself. But I did enter the 5-sense improvement realm yesterday, so I must have. You entered the 5-sense improvement realm? Clara asked with the tiniest hint of surprise in her voice, which was barely audible through the distortion. Yes, Ning said. Thank you for the technique you recommended for me. I never expected it to be so good. Me neither, Clara couldn't help but say. Anyway, that's not why I called you two here. The two looked up waiting for more information. I am giving the two of you a mission, Clara said. I will be on the carriage to Grand Fort City tomorrow. I will need the two of you, along with others that I will ask to join you later on. Be ready. Yes, boss, the two answered at the same time. You may leave now, but do not tell anyone else in the gang. I don't want people to know when I come and when I go, Clara said. Yes, boss. The two of them left the room after that. Sophie was about to part ways with Ning immediately when Ning stopped her. When do you think my sheath will be ready? He asked. Your sheath? Oh right, Sophie thought. We can go around noon. Do whatever you want until then. Okay, Ning said and walked away. He went into the study room and looked for any book that would help him at all. There were a few people in the study, and Ning asked one of them for a particular type of book. The person showed him a book that had what he wanted and Ning went on to read about it. The book explained to him how to judge a person's strength using the training rock. Each training rock was uniquely formed that couldn't be carved or chipped away at. They were way too strong to be able to do so as well. Despite the difference in size or shape, each training rock had the same amount of essence inside of it, allowing for its judgment of one's strength to be about the same despite each one being different from another. Ning learned how to judge his strength based on the movement of essence in the training rock. With what he knew now, he could judge his own strength without anyone having to tell him as well. He didn't immediately leave the room, however, as the book had more to offer. After learning how to test physical strength, he went on to learn how to test the improvement in senses. This was a more abstract testing method that required way too many different types of testing to get an accurate answer. One would have to test all the various types of senses to see how much they have improved and then get an average of all the different improvements. The test could take up an entire day, or maybe even multiple ones, and the number of different tests you had to prepare was annoying, to say the least. I'm not gonna bother with this one then, Ning thought. It wasn't like learning about the improvement was going to aid him in any way since he was going to continue improving as he cultivated more and more. If I'm really bothered about it, I'll just ask the system, Ning thought and turned the page over. The essence sense realm was not something one could test since the sense itself only became possible at that rank. As for the amount of essence in one's body, it was always the same amount. The only difference would be the purity of essence they would have. For that, Ning was sure he was one of the purer ones. He left the room not long afterward and went to the backyard. There were very few people there now, so Ning got to try out the training rock by himself. He used all the power in his body and punched the rock as hard as he could. A loud, muffled sound spread throughout the yard, making a few people turn their heads to look at him. However, after noticing that it was someone using the training rock, they quickly turned away. Ning watched the crystal become clear around when he had punched, and as the darkness moved away, he got a relatively accurate answer of 22 times. His physical body was 22 times stronger than a normal human being. That's very strong, Ning thought. I wonder how much it will slow down once I am in the higher ranks. After learning what he wanted to learn, Ning left the yard and went over to find Sophie, and along with her, he went over to the smithy. They arrived in the smithy not long afterward and met up with the person that had made the sheath for him. Here you go, the man said as he handed a metallic sheath to him. Ning looked at the slightly oversized sheath with a surprised look. One side of the sheath had a small gap in it that didn't look normal at all. Your sword is too good, the man said. Normal sheath won't help you at all. You will need someone to make a sheath with essence. For now, I've made it so that instead of having to put the sword into a small opening, you simply have to place it in that gap and then push it into the sheath. That way there is less chance of damage to the sheath. I see, Ning said as he tried it out. The sword went in perfectly, without touching any side. Thank you. Ning stood outside a carriage with Sophie, and along with them were a few more people from the gang. From the group, he only recognized Frank, the guy he had defeated yesterday. Frank seemed to hold some sort of grudge against him and continuously gave a sneering look at him whenever their eyes met. Ning tried to ignore it as much as possible and gave no attention to the man. There were multiple carriages in a line that were all going toward Grand Fort City. Since Clara was going to be with them, he looked around for her to come. Time passed and it was about time for everyone to start getting on the carriage. However, Clara simply didn't come at all. Did you see the boss get into any carriage? Ning asked Sophie softly. The girl frowned as she turned to Ning. How the hell am I supposed to know that when I don't even know what he looks like? For all I know, it could be one of these four, she said, gesturing to the 6 people in front of her, which consisted of 4 men and 2 women. They were all from the same gang, but there was somehow a divide between them. Not everyone knew everyone, so they didn't talk with each other just as much either. Let's go, the carriage is leaving, someone said, and everyone walked into the carriage. Ning sat on his seat and looked outside the window, wondering if Clara even got here at all. Should he stop the carriage for a little longer so she could get here in time? However, he remembered her capabilities as a shadow essence user. There was absolutely no way he could have known that she had come here if she wanted to hide. Since even the other bosses from the various gangs were unable to locate her while she was in the room, Ning didn't bother worrying about whether she got in or not. The carriage moved on and the journey to Grand Fort City began. The Grand Fort City was located southeast of where they were, right by the border of the Crowler Empire and the Frolane Empire. It was a large hub for the import and export of various goods to and from the 2 empires, thus making it one of the busiest cities of the empire. At the same time, due to its geographical location of being on a plateau in the Jerline mountain range, it was also a fortress that was made to fend off invading armies in the past. How long does it usually take to get to Grand Fort City? Ning asked. Well, we will reach around noon tomorrow, I believe, the blue-haired girl said. Really? The map didn't show that much of a distance between us and them, Ning said. It's less about the distance and more about the path leading there. Since we have to go to the mountaintop, the road leading there is long and winding to compensate for the steep incline once we pass the large forest. It's actually very quickly when going downhill, but when going uphill, the horses will have to rest multiple times, making the trip take longer than needed, Sophie explained. I see, Ning said. Then I should probably just go to sleep now since there is nothing else to do. Sophie knocked him on the head hard enough to hurt a bit. What was that for? Ning asked angrily. Sleep? Sophie asked with her hands on her hip. Did you forget what we are here for? We're on a mission. Sophie answered her own question. We are not here to slack off, but to be on the guard for anyone that might come and attack the boss. You can't go to sleep just because you want to. Geez, you don't have to hit me just to tell me that, Ning said as he rubbed his head. I'm just teaching you. I'm not hitting because I like it, she said. Ning shook his head and slumped back in his seat with nothing else to do. He swayed with the carriage, looking at the vast grassland that turned to the forest not long after. They also passed a massive river that followed them for the longest time before entering another forest. As he watched the various scenarios, he noticed people fidgeting a bit. He didn't immediately turn around and instead looked at them using his energy vision. Frank and two other people rocked their legs or clasped their hands or moved their hair as they sneaked a glance out of the carriage. What's wrong with them? He wondered. As he thought that, he heard a distinct rustle that only came from something moving in the forest haphazardly. He was surprised he could hear it all with all the noise, but he did, and he looked in the direction of the noise. They tried to hide, but Ning saw the dark figures that moved in the shadows of the forest. His vision was just that good. He saw the figures holding different types of weapons. Ning looked toward Sophie and it seemed that she had noticed it too. As his eyes glanced over the rest, almost all of them had noticed it. Be alert, Sophie said. Bandits ahead. Just as she said that, the wild group of bandits jumped out of the forest with various weapons in hand. Stop the carriage. One of them shouted and the entire group of carriages came to a halt. The bandits started gathering around the carriages while Ning and the rest quickly walked out to fight them. Everyone, you better not think of doing anything stupid, the leader of the bandits said. We are only here to steal your valuables, not your life. Don't try to protect one at the cost of another. Ning looked around with a frown on his face. There were 8 of them along with 5 more guards that the carriage had paid for. However, the bandits amounted to over 30 easily. If they had to fight, they had to be very careful not to get overwhelmed by them. Ning looked around the 5 carriages at the 30 or so bandits that had surrounded them. He could hear the cries and whimpers of people inside the carriages, all of whom were very scared. The main leader of the bandit moved towards the first carriage, and with him moved a small group of bandits. Ning stayed his hand and watched what was happening. If they were here just to steal, he would let it all play out normally. However, the moment they tried to kill someone, he wouldn't bother keeping up with his own game. People's lives mattered more to him than his entertainment. When do we attack? He asked as quietly as he could to Sophie, who simply shook her head slightly. Essence manifestation realm, she said softly. Ning's eyes went wide as he looked at the leader. This was somebody strong that they couldn't just go fight against. The leader slammed the carriage with his left hand, making multiple people cry out in terror. Everyone on this carriage, come out, he shouted. If you don't all come out in 10 seconds, I will kill you all. One could hear the cries of the people inside without even having any improved senses. The door to the carriage opened and a bunch of men, women, and children came out. The leader gestured and one of the bandits carefully walked into the carriage before coming out not long after. No one is in there, leader, he said. Good, the leader said. Separate the men from the rest. The bandits grabbed the men and dragged them to the side. The women cried out in terror and so did the men. Some of them were even ready to fight, but with weapons pointed at them and the others, the men couldn't do anything. The leader walked in front of the men, looking at each and every one of them individually. He then turned to his men and shook his head. Hand over all your valuables, and you will leave, he said, and let his men handle the rest. He walked over to the second carriage and saw Ning and the rest outside the third carriage. He grinned at them with a horrible smile and turned. Do you want to fight me? He asked them, taunting them. The group tightened their grip on their weapon, but they didn't move. The bandit leader only laughed and called the people in the second carriage to come out. Once everyone was out, he separated the men from the rest and stared at them once again. Does he like men? Ning thought for a fleeting moment before realizing he was probably wrong. There was something else going on here. The bandit leader frowned and angrily gestured at the bandits to loot these people as well. Then, he moved on to the third carriage, which was Ning's. Many other bandits gathered around them as well. The leader pulled out a fiery sword and pointed at them. Split, he ordered. The group hesitated for a bit, but one of the men moved to the side, and then another. In the end, everyone split off. The leader looked at them very carefully, searching for something. But what? Ning wondered. What could he find amongst the men that he couldn't amongst the women and children? As Ning thought that, the answer came to him. Could it be? He thought, are they looking for Clara? That was the only answer he could think of as to why they looking at the men. Unless there was supposed to be someone else that was a man and was more important than Clara, then it was most likely her. Except, these bandits didn't know that the boss of the Paradise Hunters was a girl. The next question Ning had to think of was why would a group of bandits be looking after the boss of a massive gang? They're not a bandit group, Ning thought. That was the only answer he could come up with. If they were a bandit group, they would focus more on stealing and looting than looking through people. Most of the bandits hadn't even taken anything of value from the carriages, just the people. They wanted to make it seem like a bandit attack, when in fact this was a predetermined attack on the boss. The only question that remained now was why did they know that the boss was here? Had someone leaked it before they were leaving? How could they have known otherwise? She should be fine, Ning thought. Not only are they not even expecting the boss to be a female, but Clara herself could also hide very well. Ning wondered if she was going to come out and fight at all, or if she was just going to hide throughout the journey. The leader of the bandits moved away to the fourth carriage after looking through the 5 men that were in the third carriage. Then, once he was done looking at the fourth carriage, he moved to the fifth. Ning started feeling tense as he saw the frowning face of the man that had not found the thing he was looking for. This is about to get nasty, he thought as he held onto his sword. At any moment, he would have to use his sword if the situation called for it. The leader himself walked into the fifth carriage after checking the men there and slammed the door on the way out. Search through all the carriages again, he ordered. Search under the seats, over the carriage, over the carriage. Search the boxes and other items too. Yes, leader, the remaining bandits nodded and checked through everything, but they couldn't find what they were looking for at all. As time went on, the leader got angrier and angrier at everyone. Finally, he couldn't keep the anger hidden and flipped out. Where is he? He shouted as he pointed the sword at Ning and the others. What are you talking about? One of them asked. You know damn well who I am talking about, the leader said. Where is he? What are you talking about? Someone from the group asked, as it seemed they hadn't caught up to what was happening. You know damn well who I am talking about, the man shouted. Where is your boss? The leader of the bandit didn't hide behind a facade of looting anymore and started outright asking where the boss was. Ning also realized that the leader was getting increasingly aggressive. If it went on like this, he was going to attack anytime now. He frowned a bit. He looked at everyone in the area, all of whom were tense as well. Essence manifestation realm, he thought. Could he beat someone like that? Maybe he had a chance in a one-on-one fight if he could catch the leader off guard, but with so many people at the mercy of the bandit, Ning didn't believe he could beat them. I need to protect those people first, he thought. His hands gripped the hilt of his sword tightly as he formulated a new plan. The leader swung his sword, releasing a fiery slash that nearly hit one of the gang members. If the person hadn't dodged at the last moment, he would have been burned. Come out, you bastard, or your men will get it, the leader shouted. However, there was no response. Ning looked around silently, wondering if the boss would continue hiding much longer. Is she really not planning to come out? He thought. As he wondered, another thought came to his mind. Or perhaps, she never came in the first place. Had she known that she was going to be attacked? Did she realize that someone in the gang had leaked their journey today and that was why she had skipped out on it? Whatever the reason was, if the boss was not here to help them fight, Ning had to quickly do something. The people cried in terror, so Ning took the opportunity to softly whisper to Sophie. On the count of 3, attack. The blue-haired girl's eyes went wide, but before she could say anything, Ning moved. Essence flowed through his body, moving into his sword as he willed what he wanted to do next. At the same time, the leader turned his head towards Ning as he sensed the movement of essence in the air. Shit! Ning thought, but it was too late to stop. Attack! The moment he dashed forward, countless rock spikes grew from all around the place, hitting many of the bandits, while entrapping the rest of the people and carriages in it. The leader stumbled back as well and came face to face with Ning, who had rushed for him. "You bastard!" he shouted as he swung his sword at Ning. At the same time, Ning pulled out his sword from the sheath. The sword came out in a single motion and hit the fire sword that was coming down. Ning expected the clash to push him back, but to his surprise, his sword easily cut through the fiery sword, turning the sword into a bunch of useless tongues of flames that disappeared. The leader was surprised by the sudden turn of events, as was Ning. Neither of them had expected the result of their clash to be in the favor of the one that was clearly weaker. "Kill!" Sophie shouted, and a burst of water attacks landed on the various bandits that were surrounding them. At the same time, the others started their attacks as well. These gang members were used to fighting, so the weaker bandits wouldn't stand much chance at all. That was if their leader didn't return in time to help them. Ning realized as well that he had to be there to keep the leader in check. He had to keep an essence manifestation realm fighter in check. The leader clapped his palms together and slowly moved them apart. As he did, fire trailed in between his palms as it extended to the size of a large arrow. The leader then grabbed the arrow and sent it flying in Ning's direction. Ning didn't have the time to use his essence to block the arrow, so he instead put his sword in front of him. The fire arrow struck his sword and sent both of them flying backward. Ning hit the rock that protected the carriage and fell to the ground. He sprawled on the ground with his sword a meter away from him. However, before he could reach for his sword, he saw the leader arrive on top of him. He slammed his foot down on his face, intending to crack open his skull. Ning put both his arms on top of him to block the attack. The leg struck his arm and the force shook the ground. However, to both of their surprise, Ning wasn't hurt at all. "Ha ha!" Ning laughed out loud while the leader moved backward in confusion. Ning quickly rolled to the side and grabbed his sword. He flipped back as soon as he grabbed the sword and dodged the incoming sword attack. At the same time, he swung with his sword, killing the bandit that had come after him. The leader didn't even show any emotion when he saw his man die. Instead, he only looked at Ning, trying to figure out if he was hiding something. How are you so strong?" the leader asked. Ning gave a massive grin. "How about you die and I will tell the answer to your soul," he said. The man clapped his palms again and created another fire arrow. "If you don't want to answer, then you can just die," he uttered and threw the arrow at Ning once again. Ning dodged to the side, but the arrow struck the ground and created an explosion that sent rocks flying everywhere. While he was fine, the others' fights seemed to have been affected by it. Ning quickly turned around to continue the fight and saw that the leader had created another fire arrow and got ready to attack once again. Ning tapped into his core and pulled some pure essence from it. He drove the essence into his sword and quickly created a spike out of the ground that shot in the leader's direction. The leader dodged and shot the arrow at Ning. Ning dodged as well, but the spray of rock from the fire arrow still hit him in the back. Fortunately, his body was so strong that he didn't even feel any pain at all. He saw the leader create another fire arrow and shoot it. Ning couldn't help but wonder why he only kept on making fire arrows. There had to be a reason for it, but he couldn't figure it out right now. He ran up to the leader and swung at him. Rock sprayed from his sword, but the leader was ready for it. A pillar of fire erupted from the ground, creating a barrier of sorts that protected the leader. Before the fire pillar could even disappear, another fire arrow came flying out from inside. It struck Ning's sword once again and both of them were sent flying back. Damn it, Ning thought as he got back up. The leader's physical strength was about the same as his, maybe even less for some reason, but his essence was for sure way better than his own. If he was hit by the arrow directly, instead of the aftershock of the explosion, he would most likely have multiple gaping holes in his chest right now. The fire pillar disappeared and the leader walked out with another arrow. "You damn brat," he shouted. "I will kill." His words stuck to his mouth as a slash of water flew in his direction. The leader quickly threw his arrow at the water slash and destroyed it. Sophie quickly caught up to Ning and helped him up. Are you okay? She asked. I'm fine, Ning said as he got back up. How do we win? Don't worry, we can win, Sophie said. You destroyed his sword already, so we have a very high chance of winning, especially once the rest are done with their fights. Ning looked to the side and saw that the majority of the bandits had been killed. Some of the people on his side had been hurt too, but none were mortally injured. We can win because I destroyed his sword? Ning asked with a confused look. He couldn't understand why that mattered at all. After all, they were fighting an essence manifestation realm fighter. Why would having or not having a conduit affect the outcome of the battle? As he wondered, Sophie launched another attack. A stream of high-speed water shot at the leader. The leader created a fire pillar within which he hid. He kept the fire pillar and shot a fire arrow from inside. Ning jumped in front of Sophie and took the attack with his sword. He was sent flying into the woods this time around, but he got back up and came back running. Sophie was knocked back too and was in no position to dodge the next attack. Ning quickly used his essence to create an earthen pillar that sent Sophie into the air. Another fire arrow flew out from inside and hit where Sophie was initially. The earth pillar was destroyed, but Sophie was fine. He caught Sophie as she fell to the ground. Are you okay? He asked. Sophie looked around with wide eyes. How did you do that? She asked. Ning couldn't wait to answer. He needed to kill the leader. Since he wasn't coming out of the fire pillar at all, he decided to destroy the pillar itself. He felt his core drain as almost all of the pure essence in his body was dragged into his sword. Then, he pointed the sword in the sky and imagined a massive rock that would crush the leader. His essence disappeared and he opened his eyes to look at the rock that should have appeared in the sky. When he did, he saw nothing. Or more accurately, he saw darkness. He saw the shadow down beneath the rock that had appeared. Only, could this even be considered a rock anymore? It was round in shape and about 50 meters in width. With such a size, it crushed the fire pillar as it came down, and crushed whatever was inside. The wind from the giant rock falling alone was enough to send most of the people falling backward. To their luck, the round rock didn't touch them at all. Had it been a cube instead of a sphere, they would have most likely been crushed along with the leader in the fire pillar. The spherical rock rolled away on the other side of the forest before coming to a stop 100 meters or so away where it was stopped by the many trees it crushed in its way. Ning's eyes slowly turned toward the ground where it had landed, and he could see the mangled corpse of the man he had just crushed. I did that? He spoke in a shocked voice. His was the only voice that was present at all. Every other person was way too shocked to even speak at all. How did you do that? One of the men finally managed to speak. I just did, Ning said, not knowing what else to say at all. They all stared at the rock in the distance for a solid 20 seconds. Their focus only wavered when they heard the shouts and cries of the people and horses now that the rock spikes Ning had created had disappeared. 2 minutes, Ning thought as he turned around to look at the people. That was the amount of time his current creation lasted before turning to essence. The rest of them quickly finished off the bandits and started checking on the people. As soon as they were done, they all surrounded Ning. What the hell was that? Sophie was the one to ask. I don't know myself, Ning said. This is my first time seeing that as well. Everyone sat in the carriage, unsure what to even say. They had never expected a newbie like Ning to create something so massive and strong that he could defeat an essence manifestation realm fighter all by himself. Ning himself sat there remembering the size of the rock he had created. He grabbed the sword on his waist as he wondered, is this really made from a mountain? If not, how else could there be something so large? What are you doing? Sophie quickly asked as she took out her own water blade. Whoa! Whoa! Ning exclaimed the moment he saw the weapon being pointed at him. What are you doing? What are you doing? She asked, sneaking a glance to his left hand that was holding his sword's hilt. Oh, sorry. Ning quickly let go of the blade. I wasn't trying to do anything. I was just wondering about what happened back then. We all are, she said. Do you really not know, or are you not telling us? I told you, I don't know. This sword is something I found randomly. I don't know what it is made up of or what it can do. The only reason I even used it at the start was that it was sharp. Sophie lowered her weapon and put it back into its sheath. I see, she said. It must have been a really massive rock that was turned into a sword. I wonder how strong the person who turned that into a sword was. Ning badly wanted to ask his system about the information on the sword, but the mystery was just too enticing by itself. I will find out the size of the mountain by myself when I get more essence, he thought. Anyway, thank you for saving us, Sophie said. Not only did you destroy his sword immediately, you also killed him. Ning turned toward her. You mentioned that before, he said. About me destroying his sword. Why does that matter? He was an essence manifestation realm fighter either way. Sophie slightly frowned when she heard that. Why do you mean why does that matter? How could making him lose a conduit not matter? She asked. But, he doesn't need a conduit, does he? Ning asked. He is in the essence manifestation realm after all. Sophie gave his words some careful consideration and finally understood what was happening. Oh, you don't know much about the essence manifestation realm, do you? She asked. I suppose, Ning said. I was told one could use their essence without a conduit once they reach the essence manifestation realm. They can, but it's not so simple, the blue-haired girl said. While they won't need a conduit anymore, they need a technique. Just like you need a technique to absorb essence, you need a technique to use your essence in a meaningful way as well. You can use your essence without a technique of course, but it would never come close to being as effective as a technique, she said. When you destroyed his sword today, you left him with just his physical strength and his 2 techniques to fight us. From what I saw, his physical strength was about as strong as your own, so the battle devolved into one of essence. However, because you had a conduit and he didn't, there weren't many different ways he could use his essence, and in the end, died to you. I see, Ning said as he finally understood it. If he had learned some more techniques than just the arrow and pillar, we would have most likely lost, huh? It's not that easy to learn different techniques, the girl said. Not only is it very hard, it is also extremely expensive to find such techniques. I'm sure that man spent half a fortune to buy those 2 techniques. Also, very useful techniques are hardly sold on the market. If you want to get a proper one, you have to join a school for essence users. I see, Ning said. Thank you for explaining it all to me. Don't be so cordial. You saved us, so it is only obvious that I repay the favor somehow. I will find another way to fully repay you for saving my life, Sophie said. Me too, brother, another person said, and me. I will find a way too. The people in the carriage spoke afterward and all of them agreed to repay Ning somehow. Ning simply smiled and said nothing. He wouldn't be so kind as to tell them to forget about it all. If nothing, he wanted some money from them at the very least. The sun went down a while later, and the carriage stopped for a while so people could make some food and sleep. The horses needed some rest too, so everyone set up camp in the forest. They all sat by the campfire, talking to themselves, enjoying their time. They prayed to whatever god was out there for letting them live today. Ning found it weird that most of these people didn't even thank him and instead thanked their gods. Not that he wanted people to thank him for saving them. Most people went to sleep with a few taking turns. Ning decided to use the time to improve his essence, so he sat in the moonlight, absorbing essences for the rest of the night. Early morning, everyone got back on their carriages and the journey began once again. It was the mountain that they had to climb up this time around, so they let the horses take it slow. The carriages arrived at their destination late noon and everyone finally got off the carriage. Where do we go now? Ning asked. Someone should be coming for us, one of the men said. As they spoke, a group of people did come out from the walls around the fortress. Have you all finally arrived? The man at the lead asked. Yes, Sophie answered. You are Brother Ermin, right? I am, the man said. Now that you have arrived, we can begin. Begin? Begin what? Sophie asked. Just as she did, she noticed that they had all been surrounded by many men. Ning noticed that as well and slowly reached for his sword on his waist. What is this? One of the men asked. Everyone else prepared for a fight as well. Please stay your hand, Ermin said. Our intention here is not to hurt you. Then what is it? Frank asked while holding onto an air sword of his own. Our intentions will make sense to you all once we reach our destination. Please come with us, the man said. He started walking in the opposite direction of the fortress behind him. Ning couldn't help but look toward Sophie for some sort of answer. She was the one that had been helping him with understanding stuff for a while now, so he couldn't help but rely on her. "Are we being attacked?" he asked. "I don't think so," she said. "As far as I know, that Ermin guy is a high-ranking member of the gang that is said to have regular connection with the boss himself. I doubt he is doing anything that goes against the gang. Still, be ready to save us." Ning nodded and looked around. So she really didn't come after all, he thought. The 8 of them were led by nearly 20 different people toward an open space in the mountain. The trees there were cleared out, and Ning could see tents being prepared. "Are we staying here?" someone asked. "I'm afraid that is the only choice you have," Ermin said. "Or rather, that is the only choice we have. After all, as it has turned out, one or more of you have betrayed the gang." "What? Nonsense." The men and women in the group started shouting at Ermin, who simply stood there and listened to it all. Even Sophie started shouting at Ermin. Ning, on the other hand, looked at everything with a silent voice. "Why aren't you speaking?" Sophie shouted at Ning. "He is accusing us of having betrayed the gang. They're looking to kill you." "I mean, he's not wrong," Ning said as he shrugged. The others in the group stopped and looked at him. "What?" they asked. "It was obvious we were betrayed," Ning said and turned towards Ermin. "Only, can you tell us why you assume one of us is the betrayer? And not someone else?" Ermin nodded. "The reason is simple," he said. "That is because only you 8 are supposed to have the information that the boss was coming to Grand Fort City." "Only he didn't come, did he?" Ning asked. "So sending us here, was he trying to figure out who the traitor amongst us is? I'm curious why us 8 were being chosen." "You weren't," Ermin said. "Everyone in Greyfire City was told that the boss would be moving with them. If their group was attacked, there are others that are holding them captive too." "Ah, that's smart," Ning said. "So the question is, how do you intend to figure out who the traitors are amongst us?" "Please let us figure that out on our own," Ermin said. "For now, hand over your weapons." 2 people walked by with a stretcher behind them. Ning wondered why they were using a stretcher and only then realized that if these people didn't touch the weapon directly, they wouldn't be harmed at all. "Damn, have to be careful about that one," Ning thought. Everyone reluctantly started handing over their weapons, so Ning handed them over too. He didn't want to fight with someone that was on the same team as him after all. "We will have tents prepared for you in a bit. You can rest after that," Ermin said and walked away. Ning slumped down on the grass and sat freely. "What is wrong with you?" Sophie asked. "You don't seem worried at all." "Why would I be worried?" Ning asked. "I did nothing wrong." "Even so, you're being treated as a prisoner. What if what they said was false and they are trying to kill us to hide evidence?" Sophie asked. "That is possible," Ning said. "But look at the number of people here. Do you really think that there are 20 people out there that have betrayed the gang? If that was the case, the gang wouldn't even exist anymore." Sophie looked around and nodded. "You're right. I need to stop being so pessimistic," she said. "No, you should be pessimistic," Ning said. "You are unfortunately in a line of work where being too trusting can get you killed. I can afford to be optimistic because I can afford to be killed." Sophie looked at him weirdly. "Are you suicidal by any chance?" she asked. Ning really chuckled out loud. "No," he said and looked around. He saw the rest of them, and amongst them, he saw Frank. "It's him, isn't it?" he thought. He remembered all the fidgeting the man had done right before the bandits had shown up. It was him and the other 2. They are most definitely the traitors, Ning thought to himself. However, he didn't find any reason to tell the others the truth. On one hand, he had no evidence other than his word, which could never be trusted at all. On the other hand, he wanted to see exactly how it was that they were planning on finding the traitors. Since torture wasn't an option, did they have stuff like truth serum? It would be fun to see. "Ah, I'm tired," he said and laid on his back as he waited for the tents to be prepared. The others were confused and even reviled his actions under their breath. However, in the end, they couldn't do anything other than that. The tents were prepared not long after and were stationed far away from each other that the people in them couldn't communicate at all. Ermin came back and issued a tent for each of them by himself. After learning where he was supposed to go, Ning walked into the tent and disappeared. With nothing better to do, Ning used his absorption technique to absorb some essence while he was free. He tried to eat one of the fruit, but even with as much strength as he had managed to gain, he still couldn't tear it open. "I should find a way to get back to that turtle somehow," he thought. Damn if it isn't one of the best ways to improve my rank. He continued absorbing essence but quickly found it rather useless. Not only was there no fruit for him to absorb pure essence from, but there also wasn't even any moonlight in the tent, to begin with. Without those two, it was impossible for him to cultivate at all. Ning sighed and decided to sleep. He lay on the bed that was prepared for him and went to sleep. It was probably not the best idea to sleep in the current situation, but there was nothing else he could do. There wasn't even much noise around him to keep him awake, and the carriage ride had left him very fatigued. So, he quickly fell asleep. He was suddenly woken up by some noise in the area. He quickly got up and out of his bed. He heard some sounds as if something heavy hit the ground with a soft thud. What's going on? He thought. Had a fight broken out by any chance? How were they even fighting without making some noise? The eerie silence didn't sit right with Ning. A forest would usually have trees rustling, animals crying in the night, or even just some bugs that made some noise. However, there was absolutely no sound from anywhere other than Ning himself. Even the soft noise from outside had completely disappeared. As Ning thought that, the tent opened up and a masked man walked in. He tossed a fire sword next to Ning's feet. Quick, we need to leave, he said. Ning was a little surprised. Who are you? He asked. Stop asking stupid questions, the man said. They sent me to get you out of this situation. I've knocked your guards out, but others will come here soon. We need to leave before they find out. He turned around and walked out. Ning looked at the sword and picked it up before walking out of the tent. After he was out, he looked around him, seeing the nearly 10 knocked out individuals. You did this? Ning asked the man in the mask. This way, the man said and walked towards the forest. However, halfway after going in that direction, he turned around to see that Ning hadn't followed him at all. What are you doing? We need to leave, the man said. Ning instead squatted in front of one of the unconscious men. He smiled a bit and poked the man's cheeks. Unconscious people don't have such tense faces, you know, he said. Your acting needs work. The masked man walked back towards him. What are you doing? We need to leave, he said. Relax, I'm not the traitor here. Besides, your plan isn't really working. Anyone with half a brain would realize that you are faking it, Ning said. Here, have your sword back. He tossed away the sword and returned back to his tent. Without waiting for anyone else to say anything, he got into his bed and went to sleep. The unconscious people around the tent started getting up one by one and looked in Ning's direction with inquisitive looks. I guess that failed, one of them said softly. Is he innocent then? Another one asked. The masked man took off his mask to reveal that it was Ermin behind it. The culprits usually are happy that they are saved, and the innocent try to make a scene since you killed their people. This one did neither, he said. It's hard to tell if he's innocent or not. So, what do we do now? Another person asked. Move on to the other one, Ermin said. Remove the sound restricting barrier from around him. We'll go for the next one. Ning fell asleep in just a few more minutes. He was woken up by the loud sound of someone entering his tent. The person had intentionally made some noise to wake him up. Ugh! What is it now? Ning asked while rubbing his sleepy eyes. Another person here to save me? No, Ermin spoke out loud. You're free. Ning stopped rubbing his eyes and looked up. Oh, yesterday's tests worked? He asked. For almost everyone, the man said. You, on the other hand, we will have to watch for a little longer. Ning gave a slightly confused look. Why me? He asked. Was last night's test not enough? Not yet, the man said. And killing the bandits doesn't get me off either? Ning asked. Everyone killed the bandits, didn't they? Ermin said. You aren't that different. But, I killed their leader, Ning said. Ermin paused for a moment. You killed their leader? He asked. But that doesn't get you off the hook, does it? I mean, I didn't just kill him. I was the one that launched the attack. I distracted the leader, destroyed his sword, and in the end killed him. The only one that even remotely helped me was Sophie, but I did everything else. Ermin didn't know what to say. Also, I hear you've seen the boss. Is that true? Ning asked. I have, Ermin said. What about it? I have too, Ning said. Given that, do you not think it would be strange if I watched them look through all the men and say nothing? Ermin's eyes narrowed this time around. You make some good arguments, but you're still not off the hook, the man said. But, we won't treat you like prisoners, so don't worry. We already caught 3 of the traitors, so you will remain free for now. I see, Ning said. Well, do whatever you want then. Although, since I've completed a mission now, who do I go see to get paid? Ning was finally allowed into the fortress, although with a few people following him discreetly. They were there to watch over him just in case he came into contact with someone else. He had been handed back his sword, so he definitely wasn't a prisoner for sure. He entered the fortress with Sophie and the rest. The massive stone fortress was nearly a kilometer wide, housing many streets and buildings within it, no different from a regular city. However, since everything was built in the fort, it all felt like one large building that they had to navigate. The streets were narrower than most cities, but not so much that it was too crowded to walk. 2 carriages could pass side by side on most paths with enough space for people to walk through as well. Did you sleep well? Sophie asked as she walked next to him. Like a baby, Ning said with a wide smile. What about you? You don't look so good. I didn't get a wink of sleep, she said. I was so worried that I was going to be killed, and then that stunt they pulled. I nearly killed that damn masked man. You mean Ermin? Ning asked. That man was Brother Ermin? Sophie asked with a shocked look. Did you not realize? Ning asked. I thought it was obvious from the silhouette and the way he walked. I didn't realize, she said. Gosh, I was so worried too. Well, you're not worried anymore, right? Just enjoy your freedom, Ning said, sneakily looking at the man that was following him from afar. Sigh, I think I'll just go to the safe house and sleep. I don't see what else I can do, she said. Right. Where's the safe house? Ning asked. There are a few taverns and houses, Sophie said. I don't know exactly which one it is, but we can figure out if we go to the mercenary station. Mercenary station? Ning asked. They belong to the gang? No, Sophie said. They're their own independent thing, but they form alliances with the gang members so that they get the better paying jobs. What do they get in return? Ning asked. It's not what they get, but rather what they don't get, Sophie said. Ning looked at her curious. What do they not get? He asked. Destroyed. Ah. As expected of a gang. Ning felt the slightest jingle of essence coins in his pouch that hung by his waist and wondered what he should do with it. Do you want to go get something to eat? I'm super hungry since I got to eat nothing, Ning said. Me too, Sophie said. Let's stop by a restaurant or shop then. Ning nodded. He looked around the fortress, wondering if there was something he wanted from the shops that he passed by. Just then, his ears picked up some noise from the front. It wasn't just him either. Many others by his side noticed that something was happening up ahead. The crowd and curved pathways didn't let them see what exactly it was though. Why are people gasping so much? Did they see a dead body or what? Ning asked. I don't think that's the case, Sophie said before her eyes narrowed in a frown. So much essence. If I'm not wrong, it must be the fort lord's tamed beast. I did hear that he likes to go on a walk with his beast from time to time. Beast? Ning asked curiously. You mean a pet? No, a beast, Sophie said. An essence beast. Do you not know about them? No, Ning said. So there are beasts that can cultivate essence. I suppose that makes sense given the existence of divine beasts. So normal beasts can cultivate essence too, huh? How do you not know about essence bees? Oh wait, you don't have any memories, sorry, Sophie said quickly. I mean, there's nothing special about these beasts other than the fact that they can use essence like humans. They're usually wild and found only in the southern regions. People here aren't used to it. Only in the south? Why? Ning asked. No one knows, Sophie said. But people do think it's because there is more essence in the south. Maybe the beasts migrated there to get stronger. More like the beasts that were there improved and survived, and the ones that weren't, went extinct, Ning said. Then I guess the origin is in the south. Origin? What's that? Sophie asked. Nothing, I'm just talking to myself, Ning said. The commotion up front got louder and the group realized that the beast was most likely coming in their direction. Although it is a tamed beast, it is still a wild beast. If you agitate it or cause it to get aggressive, it will most likely kill you. So be careful, Sophie said. Why would I cause it to do anything? Ning asked. It will just pass by, won't it? I'm just speaking in general. I wasn't talking about you specifically, Sophie said. The beast is in a higher realm than the essence manifestation realm, so you need to be careful. No one is that strong here, so if it goes wild, we will die. What a load of, if there's so much danger, then why isn't it being kept locked up? Ning asked. Quieter or the Lord will hear us, Sophie said. Ning sighed. As the group parted, he too parted with it, moving to the side, hugging the building he was next to. Sophie stepped next to him as well and hid as much as she could. Finally, the open road led to him seeing what the beast actually was. It was a red dog the size of an elephant. Not only that, it had a long crimson mane that made it look quite ferocious. It strolled with obvious pride its steps that a beast usually wouldn't have. Is that really a dog or is it actually a lion? Ning thought. Suddenly, the beast's head jerked to the side and stopped as it stared at something. It was staring directly at Ning. The beast stared at him, even though Ning wasn't turning towards it at all. He was huddled to the side of the building and was only looking at the beast through his omnidirectional vision. What the hell? Does it somehow know that I'm looking at it? He wondered. He tried not to move, but the beast was staring at him with a furious look on its face. Its breathing was rough, causing everyone in the street to start to get scared. Bong! Bong! Look this way, the man next to the beast shouted at the lion dog beast. He wore expensive-looking clothes, so it was obviously the Lord, but he didn't seem capable of controlling the beast at all. Damn man, if you can't control the beast, then why did you bring it out? Ning thought. He was surprised how young the Lord was too. From what he could tell, the man was barely 20 years old. Even if having an improved body slowed his aging, he could be no more than 30 years old. He couldn't imagine how someone like that was handed a beast that was in a higher realm than the essence manifestation realm. Ning reached for his sword and held it. Pulling it out might make the beast more aggressive, so he stayed his hand for now. The young lord continued to try and calm his beast, but the lion dog wasn't listening to him at all. It continued glaring at Ning for a moment and then started walking toward him. Ning didn't know what to do, but he could hear the fear in the way the people around him breathed. He had to do something for sure. The lion dog jumped at him suddenly. Ning saw it coming and pulled out his sword, ready to strike. However, at the last second, his sword stopped right on top of the beast as he noticed something strange. The beast stopped right next to him and didn't attack him at all. Instead, it sniffed him and started wagging its tail. It barked, letting Ning know that it was really a dog, but he couldn't understand why it was barking at all. Ning quickly put the sword back in his sheath. What's going on? He asked as he looked around for some answer. However, no one could tell exactly what was happening. I think it likes you, Sophie whispered in his ears. Ning gave an annoyed look before turning back toward the beast. Of course, I can tell that it likes me, he thought, but why? Bong, Bong, come back. Bong, listen to me, the young lord said. He tried to pull the collar on the beast's neck, but the beast wouldn't budge at all. It hopped around Ning, sniffing him out. By now, the people had already moved away, leaving him alone with the beast moving around him. What did you do to my little Bong? The young lord shouted. I don't know, Ning shouted back. Can you pull it back, please? I have somewhere to go. You must have done something, the young lord said. Guards, capture this man immediately. What? Ning looked at the young man in disbelief. Why the hell am I being captured? You came here to make trouble, I know it. You must have been here because you know I was going to bring Bong around. You bastard, you were about to hit my Bong with your sword, weren't you? The young man said to him. Guards, I called for you. Yes, Lord. A few guards came by and grabbed Ning on either side before pulling him away. However, before they could take him anywhere far away, the dog leapt to follow him, pulling the Lord who was holding onto his leash. The young Lord fell to the floor while the guards moved away in fear. Ning was now alone on the road, with the beast moving around him while sniffing him. Just what are you sniffing? What do I smell like? He asked himself. He sniffed himself too, trying to understand the dog's behavior. However, there wasn't anything that stood out to him. His body didn't stink, but it didn't smell amazing either. He hadn't put on any sort of perfume either. He did smell somewhat of the sleeping bag he was given yesterday, but that definitely wasn't it. Aside from that, There was just one more smell he could think of. Maybe, he thought. He quickly grabbed his sword and pulled it out. "You bastard!" the young lord shouted when he saw the sword come out. The other guards also moved close with their own weapons. "I'm not attacking," Ning said quickly and raised his other hand. He then slowly moved the sword, and as he thought, the dog followed the sword as well. As he expected, the dog seemed to like the sword's scent. However, it wasn't just any scent either. Rather, it was the scent that was ingrained into the sword after months of cutting open that precious fruit. It was the scent of the fruit that had made the dog come after him. Ning laid the sword on the ground and let the beast sniff at it as much as it wanted. He himself had the scent on him too, but it was nowhere near as strong as the scent on the sword. "What's that sword?" the young lord questioned. "I order you to answer me." "What do you mean what?" Ning asked. "It's my sword I carry around." The young lord was angry, but he realized that he was causing a ruckus. "Whatever, my little bong likes the sword, so it is mine now. I will pay you for it later. Now leave." Ning's eyes narrowed. "I won't sell my sword," he said. "You don't get a say in it," the young lord said. "Guards, pick that sword up, we're leaving." Ning crossed his arms and waited. The idiot was going to learn soon enough. The guards came and tried, but no matter what they couldn't pick the sword up at all. The young man himself tried, but there was nothing he could do either. "What now?" Ning asked. The young lord looked stumped and had absolutely no idea what to do. He didn't care about Ning or even the fact that he was blocking traffic for that matter. He only worried that his beast, Bong, was going to go wild if he didn't do wild. When that happened, the beast was most likely going to kill many before. With how strong the beast was, it would take his entire garrison to stop the beast. And he absolutely did not want that to happen. "Young lord, what do we do now?" one of the guards asked. The young lord really only had one choice. "Call my sister," he said. "She'll know." "Yes, young lord." The guards quickly run away to call the young man's sister. Ning picked the sword back up and put it into his sheath. Then, he moved to the side and let the beast follow him to the side. He wanted to make up space for the rest of the people to walk by. People slowly started trickling away one by one, forming a small path around the happy beast that kept sniffing. Ning wondered if he should give the fruit to the beast, even if just one, but he gave up on the idea. There were too many problems that could happen with him just doing that. Instead, he leaned close to Sophie, who was still plastered by the wall, and asked, "Am I going to be in trouble for being a gang member?" He whispered as quietly as he could so that only Sophie could hear it. Given the noise all around, it would be hard for anyone to hear him speak unless they were listening to it. "What?" Sophie was too distracted to register what was said to her. She quickly shook her head after understanding what he meant and answered him. Thank God, Ning thought. Now, he only wished that he could get out of this quickly. "You can leave if you want," Ning told her. "I will be fine." Sophie hesitated a bit, but in the end, she had no choice. She was truly very tired to keep up with whatever was happening there. She wanted to be there for Ning since he was so new to everything, but her head ached from the lack of sleep. Also, with the lord of the fortress involved, she wasn't sure there was anything she could even do. "I'll leave for now," Sophie said and walked away as well. Ning watched her leave and quickly turned back at the beast that was still sniffing him. He slowly reached out his hand to pet it. "Don't touch my little bong," the young lord cried out, making Ning stop and sigh. He crossed his arms and sat on the floor, waiting for the sister to show up. He knew the girl was there when there was a commotion far away. He could hear hurried footsteps of people that quickly stepped aside to make way for whoever was coming. He waited until the footsteps were close enough before turning to look who it belonged to. A blonde woman in a guard's armor walked out from the crowd with other guards following behind her. Everything aside from her flowing golden hair and her beautiful face was behind an armor. Her armor itself was quite unique as well. There were various parts to it, each of which was made with a different element. Ning could see air, water, fire, and earth in a single glance. When viewing more, he noticed some cloud and ice potions to the armor as well. Not only that, there was even something that looked like lava, surprising Ning. The woman, before even looking at her brother, looked at the essence beast and by association, Ning. She saw the beast sniffing around him and got curious. "What's the issue?" she asked while finally turning around to her brother. She looked about the same age as the young lord but somehow had a much more mature stance while appearing stronger as well. Jenna, this man is trying to steal my little bong, the young lord complained. What? The girl quickly turned around back to look at Ning. How is he planning on stealing your dog? That sword of his, the young man pointed. Bong likes it for some reason, but we can't take it from him because it's very heavy. Can you do something about it? The girl frowned a bit. She looked at Ning, but he had barely any essence in comparison to everyone around him. Why would someone like that try to steal an essence beast? Even if he did, why would he do it in broad daylight in the middle of the street with a lot of guards around? Take the beast back home first, we'll talk later, the girl said. I can't, the young lord said. Bong doesn't move away from that sword of his. Unless we take the sword with us, we can't leave. And you can't take the sword? The girl asked. The young man shook his head. I had the guards try it out, but it seems to be made up on some heavy rock. They can't pick it up. Only he can. Ah. The girl said. Then why not have this young man bring the sword home so the beast can follow him? Oh, the young lord said. I didn't think of that. You, come with us, the woman gestured Ning. Ning sighed and got up before following the woman who was already marching away. Grab him. Make sure he doesn't walk away, the young lord said while he followed. Stop being stupid and just follow, the girl said. Why are you treating a random person like a criminal? Stupid? Did you just call me stupid? The young man's eyes went wide. Did you forget I am your lord? Yes, Lord Jan, the girl said as she walked through the streets. I'll try to be careful next time around. Good, the young lord said. The girl nodded. I'll make sure to not voice my thoughts out. Ning walked up steep pathways and stairs to arrive in front of the main building in the fortress, the lord's mansion. The mansion itself had rocky walls with a giant metal gate. The guards standing outside it quickly opened when they saw their leader return with the beast. Follow me, and don't move a single step out of line, the girl said. Understood, Ning said as he followed the girl. Jenna immediately turned left, walking toward one of the corners of the mansion. The beast's living space was outside the main mansion, so Ning followed her there. A massive wooden gate was open to let the beast in, but the beast didn't go in at all. Instead, it remained around Ning outside, scaring everyone who believed it had gone wild. Do you have any idea why it likes your sword? The girl asked. I sometimes cut fruits with this sword because it's sharp. I think that's why, Ning said. The girl shook her head. Toss your sword inside so we can contain the beast for now, she said. Ning hesitated a bit. What? Do you think his tails are a thieving bunch who will steal from you? The woman asked. Oh, no, Ning quickly said. I'll put in the sword. He tossed the sword into the dark room. It reached quite deep into the room, and the beast followed behind it. It will most likely calm down in a bit and fall asleep. We will let you know and you can take your sword back, the girl said. Thank you, Miss Jenna, Ning said respectfully. Don't thank me, Jenna said. We should be the ones thanking you. Thank you for coming with us. Ning nodded. Sorry for being a problem. I had no idea my sword would cause such reactions from the beast, he said. Don't worry about it, Jenna said. We will let you know when the beast goes to sleep so you can take your sword and leave. For now, you can stay in the mansion. Thank you, Ning said and followed the girl. The young lord ignored the two of them and went over to check on the beast first. What's your name? The girl asked as Ning followed her. Ning, he answered. Where are you from, Ning? She asked. No idea, he replied. I have missing memories, and I'm going around trying to see if I can reawaken them. The girl asked a few more questions, obviously trying to figure out about him, but Ning circled around the truth, never revealing that he was now a member of a gang. He was still not sure how the Lord would react to such news. The girl couldn't find any information about the sword from Ning and was forced to stop asking questions to make it any more obvious. You said you came to the city just a while ago, right? Then you must not have eaten anything yet, the girl said. Actually, no, Ning said. I was on my way to some restaurant when the beast found me. I'm famished right now. The girl smiled. Come, I will ask the servants to get you something to eat. Ning nodded and followed her into her home. He was taken to a living room where the walls were covered with moving images that were certainly made up of light capture from the day when these pictures were taken. There was an older man with a long mustache shaking hands with someone in a fake wig. The old man had features that were similar to the girl that had brought him in and the man that had tried to capture him. Must be their father, Ning thought. He looked around and judging by how the photo was next to a woman that was obviously the girl's mother, he guessed that the father was dead too. He ate the food that was brought to him and waited. With nothing else to do, he simply sat around doing nothing. A few minutes later, he heard multiple footsteps coming in his direction. He peeked a glance and saw that it was the young lord. "You," the young man shouted the moment he saw him. "I want you to sell that sword to me." "I can't," Ning said. "It's an important sword for me." "I'll give you whatever money you want," the man said. "Just let me have that sword." Ning frowned. "You can't even pick it up. What's the point?" he asked. "I want it for Little Bong. He is very happy with the sword around him," the man said. Ning shook his head. "I can't do that," he said. "I will take my sword and leave." "I will pay you any. I don't need your money," Ning said. "I have no intention of selling it at all. You can't put a price on something of mine that I don't want to sell." The young man frowned. "Don't even think about leaving this place then. Guards, make sure he never gets out," he shouted in frustration and walked away. The guards looked troubled as keeping Ning here without his consent when he hadn't done anything wrong was not something the guards were used to doing. They were guards of this city and were under the young lord, but in the end, they were really just the guards of the empire itself. No matter what their young lord wanted, if the empire's law was against it, they couldn't do anything. They thought for a bit and discussed something on their own before sending away one of the guards. The guards returned with Jenna in their tow. "He did what now?" the girl asked when she heard the arrangements her brother had prepared for Ning. "You idiots! Shouldn't you have helped him?" the girl shouted at the guards. The guards apologized immediately, so Jenna couldn't find a person to vent her anger on. In the end, she sighed. "I'm so sorry about my brother's actions," she said. "I will make it up to you somehow." Ning was woken up in the middle of the night by someone. He saw the guard's uniform on the man's clothes and yawned for a moment. "What is it?" he asked while looking around to figure out what he was doing. "Oh right. I was waiting for the beast to fall asleep and fell asleep," he remembered. "The beast is asleep. Please come to retrieve your sword," someone told him. "Oh, great," Ning said as he stretched. Finally. He walked with the person over to the place where the beast was kept at. Even before getting close, he could hear the deep breaths of the beast. That thing was definitely sleeping. "Try not to make any sound," the guard told him. "I won't," Ning said as she slowly walked toward the beast. The door had stayed open for him, so he went into the room slowly and picked up his sword. Getting the sword wasn't the hardest part at all. What was harder was making sure the sword's scent didn't alert the beast as it left the room. He stepped back one step at a time while making the least amount of noise. After a while, he finally managed to get out of the room, at which moment the doors were shut immediately. "Thank you," Ning whispered as he put the sword into his sheath before getting out of the mansion. He left through the front gate, without caring about what time it was. The two moons were out in the sky on either side and there was enough light for his walk around the fortress. He was high enough that he could see most of the city from up here. Wow, the city is asleep, he thought. What time is it exactly? He didn't even know where to look to find the time at all. With no answer, he shook his head and walked down the road that led to the mansion. As he did, he heard some movements from close by. He paused for a second and looked in the direction of the sound. "Who's there?" he asked. He wondered for a second if the young lord had put someone up to kill him so they could take the sword. However, before he could understand, a man came out from the shadows. "What were you doing in there?" he asked. Ning frowned a bit before realizing he had seen him before. "You're Erman's man?" he asked. The man nodded. "Now, please answer my question," the man said. "I was doing nothing," Ning said. "They threw my sword to the beast, so I had to wait until I could retrieve it." The man looked at Ning for a moment before turning around. "Follow me," he said. "I'll take you to the safe house." Finally, Ning thought and followed him. After walking through the various interconnecting pathways, they arrived in front of a small house and went in. However, after walking in, he realized that the house wasn't actually that small at all. Since this location was below the plateau, The house was actually built onto the walls of the mountain itself. It was dug all the way in, and as such it could hold a lot more people than it originally seemed to be able to. "Thanks for bringing me here," Ning said to the man. "I'll go get some rest." He left for the room he was assigned and immediately fell asleep. He was still tired, despite already sleeping for a while, so he couldn't help but fall asleep. He was woken up by the door swinging open rather loudly. "Ugh! What time is it?" he asked as he got up from the bed. "It's early morning," Sophie's voice said. "I'm glad you're back already. Nothing happened to you, right?" "No, I'm fine," Ning said. "Were you worried?" "A little," the girl said. "The lord of this place isn't known for his best." "Oh, is he that bad?" Ning asked. "He's an insecure brat from what I hear," Sophie said. "His father was the previous lord and was a good one at that. However, he died due to some health complications. The royal family did not bother with deciding on who was going to become the next lord and simply gave a decree that the late lord's son would be the new lord. The new young lord was inexperienced and immature, but he still realized what sort of opportunity he had in his hand. So, he's trying his best to keep it to himself, Sophie said. He's worried about a lot of things, the most important one being that he believes that if he doesn't appear strong or if the royal family finds out that he's useless, he will be replaced. That's why he goes on his little walk with his beast all the time, to remind people that while he may not be the strongest, he had someone else to rely on, Sophie said. How did he manage to tame such a strong beast? Ning asked. He didn't, Sophie said. If I'm not mistaken, it was the late lord's beast. I see, Ning said as he thought about what he experienced yesterday. Everyone must already know that he's useless, but they still let him lead, huh? Well, he was made the lord by the royal family themselves, so there's nothing the people can really do, Sophie said. Still, the idiot fears being replaced so much that he messed up the normal stuff. He should just try to learn and become a better person instead. Well, at least he has his sister, Ning said. She seems mature and talented. Yeah, but what can she do? She doesn't have as much authority as her brother. She somehow managed to get herself to become the leader of the guards though, so that's something. I see, Ning said. Well, I hope the two siblings have good luck, but there's nothing for us to do. Right now, I'm just very hungry and would like to eat something. Ah, sure, Sophie said. Let's go have some breakfast. Ning didn't leave the safe house for the next 5 days. With the possibility of having to meet the beast, he simply didn't want to risk it at all. He used whatever he could to wash the blade of his and even went as far as to use some other fragrance on it to hopefully mask the scent of the fruit. However, since he had to drink the fruit regularly, he himself smelled of the fruit now more than his sword. He was in a room, reading about the world and its powers when someone walked into the room. You've gotten stronger in just a week, the person spoke. Ning turned around with a surprised look on his face. Oh, hey B, Clara, he spoke. When did you get here? Just this morning. You can speak your mind, the girl said. I have concealed the room so no sound will escape. Ning looked around, but he didn't notice any such possibilities. How did you do it? He asked. I have my ways, the girl said as she sat down on a chair next to him. She leaned against the table and stared at him openly. What are you looking at? Ning asked. Your essence, she said. It is so pure. Have you been using the twin moon absorption technique? Every moment I can get, Ning said. He hid the fact that he was also drinking the juices of the fruit he had, but since he had barely enough for a month more, he didn't find the need to explain that. Your talent must be truly terrific for you to have improved this quickly, she said. Ning simply smiled, not wanting to tell her that his talent was barely above average at best. It was the fruit that was helping him more than anything. I heard you killed the leader of the bandits on the way here, she said. Oh yeah, I did, Ning said. But these people seem to not trust me, and still think I'm here with some malicious intentions. It's hard to trust someone when they arrive just as the attacks begin, Clara said. Attacks? There were more? Ning asked. Your group wasn't the only one that was attacked, Clara said. 3 other groups had people that had contacted others to say I was there. What do these people actually want from you? Ning asked. Are they that desperate to take over the mercenary and merchant business? Clara looked at him and hesitated for a second. There is a reason, although I cannot tell you about it yet, she said. Some people are trying to kill me because my existence threatens their standings. Fortunately, they think I'm a guy, so I've been safe for now. Rich people? Ning asked. Clara nodded. Powerful rich people, she said. Let me know if I can help, Ning said. While I don't have much strength in me right now, I will surely grow stronger with time. I can be of help by then. Clara smiled. That's why I am here right now, she said. Ning was surprised. What do you mean? Do you want to get stronger faster? She asked. I can help you. Ning hesitated a bit. How exactly can you help me? He asked. You have the talent, but you have nowhere to learn. I want to send you someplace where you can learn to become stronger and gain skills. One of the best places in the entire continent, Clara said. Ning's eyes went wide. Wait, what do you mean? What place? He asked. The Blackhawk Academy, the biggest school in the entire Blackhawk Dominion, one of the biggest schools in the entire continent, and certainly the place you want to be if you want to grow as an essence user, Clara said. That place is dedicated to helping you learn about essence and its intricacies, and I want to help you get in there. Ning paused for a second. I get that you think I'm talented, but why me? He asked. Surely you have other more trusted subordinates who can make use of that. It's easier to get better when you're just starting out, and you are one that belongs in that category, Clara said. I want to sponsor your study there, to help you grow. In return, I want you to help me in the future when you get stronger. Help you with what? Ning asked. I will tell you when the time comes, Clara said. I just want you to promise that you will help me. Ning thought for a bit. I promise I will help you to the best of my ability, he said. But are you fine with me? Do you even trust me just yet? I trust you a lot more now than I did just a week ago, Clara said. Of course, I still have some doubts about if you're faking it all, but I can tell that one thing you're not faking is your essence rank. You've truly only just started your essence journey, and as that, it makes the other implausible things possible. Also, this is a leap of faith from me. I am choosing to trust you despite not knowing if it is the correct thing to do or not, Clara said. I hope you won't let me fall to my death in the end. Ning smiled. Don't worry, he said. One thing I don't do is betray people who have been nice to me. You have chosen to help me, so I shall go my whole life in this world trying to pay you back 100-fold. That I can promise you with utmost sincerity. Clara smiled. Great, she said. Then prepare for it. I hear the school's admission starts in a month, so you will have to be there in the next 3 weeks. Blackhawk Dominion, Ning thought to himself. That's quite far. Can I even make it in time? Don't worry about the distance, Clara said. Travel in the south is much faster than here in the north. You will be there before you even know it. Ning went into the Frolane Empire from Grandfort City, and then took a carriage to go across the Frolane Empire. He completed the journey in about 10 days, using 3 different carriage rides. To his surprise, people toward the south used weaker essence beasts to help with the travel. These beasts were much stronger and faster than normal horses and didn't tire as easily. They also didn't need as much food, making them perfect for transportation. Clara hadn't lied when she said that travel in the south was faster. The essence in the south was also quite thick, compared to the Crowler Empire. Ning crossed the border of the Frolane Empire, going into the Blackhawk Dominion. The Blackhawk Dominion was internally separated into 5 different regions, all of which were controlled by a major family. The main region, the Blackhawk region, was controlled by the Blackhawk family, who the other 4 families reported to in the end. For all intents and purposes, they were the royalties of this piece of land. The school Ning was supposed to go to, the Blackhawk Academy, was in the very same Blackhawk region, in a city known as Arendelle City. The Arendelle City was located at the base of a massive mountain range that separated one half of the Dominion from the other. The city was massive, holding up to 3 million people in the city alone. The city was very advanced when compared to the rest of the cities in the Glacian continent, and had the best of the best essence users here. In fact, Ning even heard rumors of Essence Soul Realm fighters being easily found in this city. That was something the Crowler Empire, or even the Frolane Empire and the Osager Empire could not brag about. Essence Soul Realm was quite difficult to reach there after all. When Ning finally arrived in the city, he couldn't help but be shocked by everything he saw. Over his life, he saw many things that were far more prettier and amazing than what he was looking at, but for some reason, he could easily dissociate himself from those memories and fully enjoy what was before him. He saw the light boards that lit in front of various shops and stores. Ning looked at his own sword and hilt and knew he needed to enter one of those stores very soon. He could put that for later, however, since there wasn't much time before the academy began taking new students. He and Clara had spent the last month preparing for this very moment. Now that he was here, he wasn't going to mess it up. Ning didn't waste any time and walked straight out of the city, going to the base of the mountain range. After all, that was where the Blackhawk Academy was located. The Blackhawk Academy stood proud at the base of the mountain, right outside the city, and was massive enough to be a small city on its own. Ning found a line of people waiting outside the academy and was surprised at just how strong everyone looked. He hadn't entered the essence sense realm, but he could still tell that most of them were stronger than him. "Hi, did I arrive late by any chance? Have the tests already started?" he asked the person at the end of the line. "Oh, no, you're in time," the person said. "This line is so you know when your test is." "My test?" Ning was a little surprised. Each person's test is individual? No, we find out the date of the test, that's all," the man said. "These people take tests in batches as there are too many people joining each time, so we are here to find out which match we're in." "Ah, I see," Ning said, finally understanding what was happening in front of him. "I hope I don't accidentally end up becoming a teacher. Until that time, I have no good set of knowledge regarding the topics at all." He waited in line for at least 3 more hours before he was finally allowed into the academy to find out when his test would be. However, before getting that, there was a small set of questions he had to answer. There were 3 people in front of him, each in their 60s, and they all started asking questions one by one. "What is your name? Where are you from? Do you think this place is for you? Do you have the money to learn?" These sorts of questions were asked one after another, so Ning gave some truthful answers. The old people didn't give much response to the answers, other than a stamp of approval so he could take the actual test. Ning looked at the information he was given. 4 days. He had to stay out for 4 days before he could take the test. He was fine with that. There were times he had waited for worse. This was nothing. Ning had to remain indoors for the rest of the days, as he couldn't go out to just as he pleased. Unlike the Crowler Empire, the Blackhawk Dominion held many beasts that could easily latch onto his scent, making it impossible for him to work here at all. In fact, because of his sword's scent, the journey until here had been something that caused nearly major problems for him. Thankfully, he had the brilliant idea of using his sheath as the thing that held the scent, so that the beast wouldn't go for his sword. The beast that pulled the carriage got used to the scent, and some while later, Ning got rid of it. That way, he had finally been able to come back. On the day of the test, however, Ning couldn't take any chances. So, he cleaned his sword and himself to the best of his ability, and finally went to the Blackhawk Academy. If Ning were to pass these tests, he could easily become one of the strongest powerhouses in the whole world. Ning arrived in front of the academy gates and waited along with many others to enter it. There wasn't much time before the tests would begin, so he was quite excited about it. "Please grab a token from the side when you enter. Your turn will be based on the number in the token," a person from the academy said. Everyone got into a line and entered while taking one of those tokens. Ning took one as well and got in. 243, he thought, isn't that going to take some time? He knew a little about the tests that would be conducted in the academy, so he knew how long one would take on average to go through them all. Given his number, he doubted it could leave before 3 in the afternoon. The first test was a written test to test one's knowledge and intellect. Ning had learned quite a bit on the way to the Blackhawk Dominion, so he wasn't as worried. He wrote down the answers just as he remembered. As for the ones that required creative thinking, he did his best. The written test ended an hour later, and they were taken away for physical tests. The first of the physical tests was one where they simply tested their ranks. Everyone had different ranks, and as such everyone would have different results. The academy was trying to determine the rank of everyone that had gotten in, while also determining just how well the rest of their results were when compared to their ranks. He had to wait quite a while before he got to take the test at all. Being 243rd on the list didn't help at all. It took nearly 3 hours before it was his turn to be tested. Ning was still in the 5-sense improvement realm, so he let them know as such. The examiners still tested him and noted it down as such. Once he was done, Ning moved on to the next test, the physical strength test. Fortunately, people were already taking the test, so he didn't have to wait much for his turn to come. Half an hour after arriving, he was already punching and kicking at the training rock. The examiners showed some rather surprised expressions when they saw Ning's nearly 25 times strength. That was already surprising for even Essence Manifest Realm Essence users to begin with, not to mention a 5-sense improvement realm person. After the physical test, Ning was sent to the sense test. He was sent into a dark room that was devoid of all light and sound and forced to locate various things that were in the room. He had to use the limited light to see what was where and use smell to locate a few things. He also had to use sounds to determine if something was in total darkness or not. All in all, he completed the test relatively quickly and was let go. The examiners were once again surprised, only this time Ning wasn't sure how surprising his results were. Was he once again better than an average Essence Manifestation Realm user? Or was it a little less impressive than that? After he was done there, Ning was taken to the Essence Sense test. However, due to not being in the Essence Sense realm just yet, he was forced to skip the test and go on to the next one. The next test was one for Essence Manifestation. Only, you could use conduits to use Essence if one so please. At first, Nine was a little surprised and confused. Just how could one use conduits when each conduit was bonded to a single person? They hadn't even let him bring his sword into the academy, so there shouldn't have been a way for him to do anything. However, fortunately, there was. On an irregularly shaped staff, there was a large, uncut, blue gem that seemed to be created from the ocean itself. The gem was the conduit, and would not require one to bond with it at all. After all, it was a natural conduit. Ning grabbed the staff and felt the conduit trying to devour the essence in him. He smiled a little, surprised at the fact that he could actually sense something like that. "You want my essence? Take it," Ning thought and started pouring his essence into the staff. The blue gem devoured his essence as if it had never seen something so good before. Then, Ning focused on the target before him. He could tell that the blue gem could produce water, so he decided on what water skill to use. He landed on a single answer. Water blast. He pointed his staff in front of him and suddenly a gush of water shot out from the staff like it had been coming from a pressurized nozzle. It didn't lose steam all the way until the end of the training field when it struck the training rock. The examiners looked surprised once more and they quickly recorded everything before sending Ning away. Now that he was done with most of the tests, there was a single one before he could go back to his room in the city. The final test was a simple one. The test involved having one of the examiners test one's essence purity. The examiners were talented in recognizing how pure the essence was for any source, so they were more than qualified to test everyone's essence. Ning waited until his turn and walked up to the man that was testing his essence. He placed his palm on Ning's abdomen and asked, "Please use your absorption technique if you have any, otherwise just breathe normally." Ning nodded and used the twin moon absorption technique just as the examiner requested. He breathed in and out as the essence in his body started moving. After a minute or two, the examiner finally left his abdomen. However, in doing so, Ning could see an absolutely shocked expression on the man's face. "So pure," the man murmured to himself before looking up. "Are you from a big family by some chance?" Ning left the academy, damn near sure that he would be selected. Although nothing was set in stone yet, so he had to wait a week for the results to be out. There were thousands of people trying to get in and only 100 or so would enter, so Ning still had chances of failure, however little they may be. He returned back to the city to spend the next week on his own. He returned to his hotel and immediately went to sleep. Not only was he tired, but he also needed to sleep so he could be awake at night when the moon was out. That was the only time he could absorb essence after all. He woke up late at night and drank the juices from one of the few remaining fruits. Just 4 more and it was over. As soon as he drank the juices, his hunger and drowsiness all seemed to fade away immediately. Once his mind was refreshed, he started using his absorption technique by the window where the moonlight was brightest. He continued with it overnight and only stopped in the morning when there was no longer any visible effect from the absorption technique. He got up and stretched a little. "It feels like I'm close," he thought. "I wonder if I can do it in a few days." In a month's time, he had started getting close to reaching the next rank in his essence journey. The Essence Sense realm. There wasn't any major improvement to his abilities in that rank, unfortunately, but he could start sensing essence more clearly, so that was a big help. I will be needing more materials once I run out of the fruits, Ning thought. Will that be enough? He took the bag that was in the corner of his room and put it on the bed. He opened the bag and pulled out a few clothes and set it aside on the bed. Quite a bit deep in his bag was a pouch full of coins that he was given by Clara to pay for the academy. He put that aside as well and reached for something that was below that. He brought out a small box and opened it up to find a white crystal inside that was similar to the essence that he and Carlos had brought over to Clara. She had sent 2 of such crystals with him to use and absorb and had said that she would send 2 such crystals every month so he wouldn't have to worry about running out of pure essence at all. His absorption technique wasn't the best at getting strong fast, so he had to use such crystals to make up for it. I'll use you guys once I'm done with the remaining 4 fruits, Ning spoke by himself and put everything back inside aside from the coin pouch. He took the coin pouch and left his hotel room. After learning about the cost of the academy, he realized that he would have quite a few coins still remaining, so he wanted to use the remaining coins to buy a proper sheath for himself. The one he had been using was still working, but there were already way too many cuts and it was just one wrong move away from being cut open. This time around, he wanted a sheath that was made using actual essence. Ning walked around the city looking at the new stuff. There were so many things he could spend his money on, so many things he wanted to spend his money on. In the end, he was forced to stay his hand as he didn't have that much with him. Hopefully, Clara would keep to her promise of sending him some pocket money starting next month, or he would be totally broke. He arrived at what looked like the place where weapons were made per request. He walked up to someone who looked like a clerk and spoke, "Hi, I'm looking to make something cheap. Do you happen to know the prices by any chance?" Price of any conversion depends on the object of conversion, the size of it, and the element behind it. May I ask what your criteria are on this aspect? The clerk said. I need a sheath that I can keep my sword in. I don't have any requirements other than the fact that it has to be as cheap as possible while remaining moderately durable, Ning said. Then you should have one that is made with air. A room full of air should be enough for good durability too. Since it's just air, it is also very cheap. What do you think about it? The clerk asked. That sounds fine. May I know how much that will cost in water coins? Ning asked. Water coins? It should be around 40 water coins, the clerk said. 40, huh? Can I have one made please? Ning said. Let me write up an order for you, the clerk said and quickly wrote a few words in a piece of paper and handed it to Ning. Please take this to Converter Frey in room 14. He will do what is remaining and take the pay there. Thank you, Ning said and took the piece of paper with him. Converter, huh? He thought. He hadn't realized that was what the artificers would be called in this world. These people's job was to convert real-life materials into weapons and armor, which was why they were called converters. Ning didn't really like the name, but who was he to judge others' naming skills anyway? His cousins had made it pretty apparent that he wasn't the best at naming things. Ning found the Converter Frey as mentioned and handed the paper. The old man that was working quickly read the paper and asked for the money. Ning hesitated to pay before seeing the item but gave it to him in the end. I will come later to pick it up then, he said. Later? Converter Frey asked. Just wait and watch. I'll be done in 10 minutes. Oh, you can do it right now? Ning asked the Converter Frey. The man gave a smug smile. I'm one of the best converters here, and this task you've brought me is barely any trouble at all, he said. Now, stand back. I need as much space in the room as I can get to work with. Yes, Ning said and stepped outside the door, while still watching everything. Once he was out, the old man moved his wrist, and instantly, everything in the room disappeared. Storage artifact? Ning thought as he realized that the items in the room had been moved away somewhere. Something like that exists as well? The North truly wasn't that useful in terms of helping Ning get experience with essence. I wonder why I even arrived so close to the North, he thought. Wait, no, that's not right. I must have arrived somewhere good, but then the damn turtle took me north. Yes, that must be it. The old man looked around the room and nodded to himself. Good, I have enough space now, he spoke out loud. Then, he lifted his arm and did something. Ning couldn't see what was happening at all, nor could he sense the essence being used. However, his improved senses still told him a few truths that a normal person couldn't have learned at the moment. His hair, it stopped moving, Ning noticed, so did his clothes. He waited for a few seconds and he sensed the flow of air in the corridor he was standing in. Nothing is moving in and out of the room. It's like someone has put a barrier on the door, he thought. Is the air in the room completely cut off from the outside? Ning could also no longer hear any sound from inside the room. It was almost as if the air that was supposed to move to transfer sound no longer did. So weird, Ning thought. He was trying to make as little sound as he could so as to not distract the converter. He continued watching as the converter suddenly took a deep breath and stopped. Ning felt the rigidity in the air last for a second and then, the air glowed a bright white. The old man made a gesture of grabbing onto the air and started pulling it. As he did, the glowing air started converging at the center as per the old man's intention. As the air in the room disappeared, Ning felt the air outside move into the room like a typhoon. His clothes were whipped by the sudden suction that was created inside the room as the air moved in. The old man continued compressing the glowing air into the center, and as he did, more and more air filled the room. About 2 minutes later, the old man had completely taken the air in the room and had moved it onto a single ball of white light. He then took out a hammer and anvil from somewhere and started hammering the glowing ball of light. His hammer seemed to have no rhyme or reason as to where and how he was hitting the ball with it. However, even so, the ball somehow warped into the shape the old man wanted. The old man quickly took out a piece of paper to refer to the overall dimensions of the sheath that Ning had requested and worked the next few minutes to get that exact. He hammered for the final time and stopped. When he moved away, Ning could see a translucent, white sheath on the anvil. The sheath he had asked for had in fact been prepared for him, and it had taken even less than 10 minutes. Wow! He couldn't help but say. That was amazing, sir. How did you do it so quickly? The old man rubbed his nose in pride and smiled. I could have done it in just 5 minutes if I wanted to, he said. But I still need my essence, so I couldn't waste it just like that. He grabbed the sheath and looked it over one last time before throwing it in Ning's direction. Take it and test it. See if your sword fits, he said. Ning nodded and pulled his sword out from the metal sheath. Then, he slowly inserts it into the air sheath. The sword slid perfectly into the sheath, surprising Ning as to just how accurate it was. What was even more surprising was how easily the man seemed to have made something so perfect. I can even use this sheath to use wind attacks now, can't I? He thought. It was seriously quite good. Ning looked at the man and greeted his farewell respectfully. The man deserved the respect as even without direct experience, Ning knew that not just anybody could have done what the man had done today. Even if the item he had made wasn't of any note, the craftsmanship behind it was. It showed just how much the man must have trained over the course of many years to come to this level. Ning thanked him one last time and left the place. He walked out of the building with his hand on his sheath. He poured a little bit of essence into it and created a small breeze in front of him that made him feel like it was springtime, despite being some of the hottest days of summer. Ning couldn't help but smile at the breeze and moved on. With this, I'm all set, he thought. Now, all he had to do was wait for the results to be posted. A week later, the results were out. Ning went to the academy gates with the token that he had gotten when he had taken the test. As soon as he reached the gates, he saw a crowd of people gather around the wall. Ning could see bits of names and numbers on the paper that was stuck to the wall. There's the result, he thought. He pushed through the crowd and walked right up to the wall. Then, he checked for his name on the list. Ning, 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 Ning. Ah, there it is, Ning said when he saw his name on the poster. I knew I could do it. He was still a little happy that he officially made it. He looked at his name for a few seconds more and walked away from the crowd. He could hear shouts of cheer and cries. There were definitely more cries than cheers. Given how many people have taken the test, it was obvious that more people would have failed. As he was wondering what he was supposed to do now, a person from the academy walked out and posted another piece of paper. Then, he spoke out loud. Everyone who has passed, please register as soon as you can. You will have to register and move into the academy by the end of the week. Any later, and you will be rejected from joining the academy, the man said before disappearing. Ning saw that the post on the wall said the same thing as well. Did I bring my money? Ning thought and grabbed onto the pouch on his back. I did. I should get registered right now. He walked to the open gate and handed over his token. He mentioned his name and the guard there looked through the list to find him. Head over to that building over there. You can already see a small crowd gathering, can't you? The man said. Ah, yes. Thank you, Ning said and walked away. He went into the academy, slightly surprised at the fact that all the testing locations that had been set up had already been stripped away, leaving behind empty land on the ground. Ning stared ahead at the massive building that simply towered over everything. He couldn't see what was beyond it, except for the barren mountains that occasionally flashed with some colors. There were most likely people there that were learning or practicing with their essence, which was what he was seeing. Why is one of the best academies of the continent so gloomy? Ning wondered. There's barely any color anywhere. I can't even see that many trees at all. He arrived at the registration building and waited for his turn. He could see the ages of the people that had passed along with him. Every single one of them was a teenager or in their early 20s from what he could see. The rare exceptions were younger people, but never older ones. The academy didn't trust an older person to have the talent required to make it big as an essence user. Ning went into the registration building when his turn came and started filling up information when he was asked. Clara had already helped him come up with a fake identity, so besides keeping his name the same, he had new backgrounds that he needed to remember. They were rather easy, so he wrote them down. Ning was now from a small noble family in the eastern region of the Frolane Empire. He was born to a loving father and mother and had 2 elder sisters. His father used his hard-earned money to buy him the best crystals, which he had diligently used to practice essence. As a result, from a very young age, his essence had been quite pure. That caused the problem of his having to improve slowly, but Ning's father was fine with it, and so was Ning. However, now Ning had grown and very soon he would have to take over for his father. So, to improve himself even further and learn more about being an essence user, he had come to the Blackhawk Academy, which was one of the best in the world. Ning wrote down everything the piece of paper asked for and brought out a pouch to pay the required fee of 250 fire coins. That was just the entrance fee too. Every 3 months, he would have to pay another 50 fire coins if he wanted to continue his practice. After Ning paid the cost of admission, he was admitted into the academy and was made to quickly return with his item by the end of the week. After that point, leaving the academy would also be prohibited for him, with some exceptions. After he moved to the academy, he was going to have to stay in the academy for months at a time. Ning had no choice but to agree to those terms. He wasn't particularly unhappy with them either, but he would have preferred being a little freer. Maybe the teachers here hated their students having freedom. Ning left the building and walked out of the academy. He could still hear the cries of those that hadn't managed to make it into the academy. He could swear that he almost tasted the salt in the air with how many buckets of tears were being shed today. He had to walk amongst the disappointed people back to the city, but their mood never affected his own. He had made it into the academy after all. After this point, Ning planned on becoming as great as he could with essence. If he could, he would help Clara with whatever her problem was. After that, he would spend a few more years gathering enough energy, and then at some point, he would leave this place too. I hope I have enough adventure in the next few years to last me a while, Ning thought. I need to go find a planet with a corrupt constellation so I can drain it. The system didn't care whether a constellation was corrupt or not, as it did with humans. While Ning was punished if he intentionally hurt someone innocent, there was no such thing as a constellation. Even then, Ning preferred going after the bad ones anyway just so he didn't feel guilty at all. I can ask system for a bad one, Ning thought. After that, I should find a few planets to put into my world. He wanted to give his daughter some actual friends and partners for his beasts. Those were after all the only reasons why he was even bothering with everything.